Hey folks, Tim Freitas here from the Garden of English, and today I brought on a good friend who's going to help us create topic sentences for rhetorical analysis in the easiest, most simplified way possible. So Nicki, I really appreciate you being on here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get right into our activity here for today.
Okay. Hi, Tim. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Nicki Beecham, and I live in Pennsylvania. I teach at Hollidaysburg Area Senior High School, and I've been a Lang teacher for about a decade. I want to give a shout out to my Lang kids, period 1, period 6. Hi, guys. This is happening.
Yeah, right.
Uh,
And actually, so it was actually your Lank kids that reached out to me, and they were like, "Hey, will you like?" It was almost like a blind date, right? Where it was like, "Hey, we."
that is so accurate. It was one of my students in sixth period, and you know who you are.
Yeah,
He it was so funny. He said, I even downloaded the Facebook app. It's some archaic thing.
yeah, we're old. It's okay.
And he said, I messaged Mr. Tim Freitas, and I was like, what are you talking about? And then here we are.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So just so
yeah,
just so everybody knows, the student just reached out to me and was like, "Hey, my teacher wants to do a video with you. Will you do it?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind at all." Um, and it actually happens more than you think. Kids contact me all the time about video stuff, and that's okay. If I can get up to them, I will. But anyway, in order to not waste anybody's time, right? Although it's a fun story to have. First of all, shout out to the Tigers here, and then let's talk about our problem. So, basically, a lot of times kids are taught to write about rhetorical devices, but we know that the new prompt wording wants rhetorical choices, and they're not the same thing, right? And you reached out to me and you were like, I've got a really good way to kind of help kids get from devices to choices. And this is especially important for kids that might be watching this that have been doing things device driven all year. And now they need to make a quick switch before test day because they're like, oh, I thought they were the same thing, but they're not the same thing. And we're going to not only give them strategies for how to just get from device to choice, but also put it into a topic sentence so they can have really good topic sentences on test day. So why don't you tell us the first thing that you do? So I'm going to just get this up here on the screen, and we've got the document right here. What's the first step? What do we need to do with kids? What do we have to do to help them here?
so the first thing, obviously, they can recognize the device. And as I know is a huge problem is kids like the verb use.
Oh, yeah.
And that keeps us kind of in the device pool. So I threw together this list that I said, okay, let's look at the verb behind the device because the choice is what is the author doing, not what is the author using.
Right. I always tell my kids, listen, the only time they're allowed to use the word use is if they're telling people not to use the word use or if they're talking about female sheep. Like, that's how this works.
Yes, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So then we go through this list, and I have them work on it individually, and then I kind of have them pair share, and then we do a whole group thing. Believe it or not, this step 1 can take an entire class period, if the kids really get into it. So
Yeah.
if you look at the first one, the author uses illusions. Students are going to recognize illusions,
Yeah.
right, at this point. But instead of saying uses illusions, I just say, guys, what's the verb behind illusions?
Right.
And obviously, they'll come up with alludes.
Right.
So,
And now
uh,
this is nice too, though, because not only can we do alludes, we might actually do references.
mhm.
And now kids have two verbs to talk about the same thing, so they don't think that they always have to only know one verb.
Right, right. And that's really why I like them to share with each other because they'll say, oh, that's a really good idea. And they'll jot it down to, if somebody else came up with something that they didn't come up with.
Gotcha. Now, another cool thing too is that if they're using their own verbs for this, it's not like you're printing out a verb list for the kids where it has things like bamboozle and
Mhm.
lampoon and like all of these other verbs that kids will never use, but they might see on a list and be like, I'm going to use that. No, no, no. This is just kind of classic here. So let's actually
Right.
just look at a couple of the common ones here, and let's provide some verbs. Just so everybody knows, this document will be linked right down in the description below this video. And so if you want to access this and everything else that comes after, by all means, feel free to download that, and you can practice with it whatever you like. So what about analogy? So you send your kids off. What are they going to turn analogy into? Because you can't say analoginizes or something like that, right? Um,
Although they should try that.
yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure some students might, but what do we have here?
Typical answers are compares
Yep.
or contrast.
Right, and I'm sure that you'll have one kid that does the juxtapose here.
Yes,
Yep.
Yeah, I love juxtapose.
Yeah.
I love it.
And that's fine. And so now, we've got some good verbs here. Some other so all of these are actually pretty common, but another one that shows up a lot is parallelism. Now this is intriguing for me because I have kids that always want to say uses parallel structure, but I'm like, no, you got to be more precise about that. And so what verb typically comes out from your kids?
I typically see repeats.
Yeah. Yeah, my students would say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things too is that parallelism or parallel structure is a type of repetition. And I tell my students the best thing about finding something that's repeated, whether it be in terms of sentence form or just a word or a phrase, is that the effect is always the same. It's always to emphasize. And so I really push home for my students, like, don't just say in order to, so and so repeats this in order to emphasize his or her point. You want to say so and so repeats this in order to emphasize, and then put the point actually in there.
Exactly.
And that'll make a better topic sentence. There's no doubt about it. All right, so we've got parallel structure. That's going to be repeats. What about this here? What about the uses the counter argument? I think that kids might want to consider doing this one a lot, but I think we can get some better verbs here.
So you can say rebuts, refutes, argues.
Yeah.
They're
And
the that I typically get.
argues. And you know what? Concession actually can fit in here. So we can do concedes for sure. But nonetheless here, all of these are great verbs. And if the kids know the difference of what a concession is or what a refutation is or what a rebuttal is, then they can choose the most precise one. But I think this is already a great activity to get kids thinking about the verbs and then saying, okay, let's make sure we use those verbs in our topic sentences later on. So no, that's excellent. And that's our first activity. And, that's a great way to, I think this is even a great, I have teachers that reach out to me a lot that they're like, hey, I'm being observed. I've got a 50-minute class period. This is a great activity for that. The kids are going to be learning, and this is a great vocab lesson, getting kids more vocab in what they're saying. So
I've also noticed, like, this is an activity that you can do towards the beginning of the school year. I think I probably did this end of September, beginning of October, but then you can bring it back out in, March or April when you're heading closer to the exam time, to just sort of refresh.
Yep.
And their confidence level between October and April is completely different. So whereas they're nervous with this at the beginning of the year, they own it in April. It's really neat to see the progression.
Okay. So now let's say we get this list and, we're going through all these things like imagery and we're like describes and stuff like that. We get our list, we get our verbs and everything. What's our next step, though, to make the best topic sentences that we can in a rhetorical analysis essay? And I know that you start with visual stuff and then you shift to actual writings and whatnot. So why don't we scroll down and let's look at the organizer chart here. And can you walk us through what's going on here?
Sure. So I obviously this is a lesson in moving the kids from devices to choices.
Yep.
And I love graphic organizers. I love to use charts to show them the individual parts to something and then show them how they connect into a sentence. So ultimately, we will come back to this chart to fill everything in, to show you how it works for a topic sentence. And like I said, I break it down into its parts and I color code everything. My friends, my colleagues, everybody makes fun of me because I color code everything. So that's why you see the different colors here. And I will explain that in more detail in a couple of minutes.
Yes.
But this activity is actually I base it in propaganda. That's a review for propaganda, but it's an easy way to get the kids started with this. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom here. I have several ads here that you can use, but I'm just going to jump to a Walmart ad here. So after we would fill in the verb chart, and again, that may be a whole period. That may be like a whole day. And then the next day we would come here. I give them some time to analyze the ad itself, and we use it as a review for propaganda. In this case, it's plain folks, so that they just kind of recognize what it is that's going on.
And you're suggesting that kids originally would just be like, oh, they're using plain folks here.
Right.
All right, got it. And so now what we're trying to do is we're trying to shift the kids from saying uses plain folk in order to saying that they're actually, at Walmart's actually actively doing something. Awesome.
Right. They're actually what are they doing? What is the choice that they're making to purposely do? And as you can see here, I just have up here, instead of using plain folk. So we would look at this ad, we would talk about the plain folk, we would just kind of analyze the ad itself. And then if we pop back up to the chart, and I will show you, I'll use the answer key chart here. I do have that included. I like to start with the goal, and I call that the in order to. Actually, Tim, I think I got that from you, the in order to statement.
Right, because that forces kids to put a why in their topic sentences. A lot of times kids will like to put a choice, right? And if you're a student watching this, a lot of times you put a choice. You know, the author uses a metaphor, although we want to change that to compare, contrast, or juxtapose. But a student will mark, hey, the author uses a metaphor, period. But they don't put why. Putting the words in order to there, that's the best first step, because that's going to create that why. And once you find the why, you can go back and say, what's my evidence for that? So anyway, so you actually like to get the kids to start with the in order to, which I completely agree with.
Yes. So we and after we have that conversation about the ad itself, this actually comes pretty easily to them. You know, they pick up the why. So I tell them to jot that note down in the goal column, in the green column, and then we work our way backwards. So I have here in the purple column the direct object, but I really look at that as the what. Like, what thing is the speaker or the author using to help connect to the in order statement? And again, that adds pretty simple, and coming up with the shopping experience is pretty easy for the kids. So and again, it's a wonderful review activity for action verbs, direct objects, you know, sentence structure. Then we move to the verb column, and because we practiced with the verb list at the beginning, and they know that uses, or any form of use, like any synonym of uses,
like utilize or employs the use of. I'm like, it all sucks. Like, stop.
Yes,
stop.
Like, you're not allowed to use that. Their confidence level is getting greater here. And we come up with something like simplifies. So they have just the short words and phrases filled in the columns that you see in the three columns.
Then
I say, okay, who's the speaker? And by this point, we have studied Soapstone. They understand all of that. So they say, well, Walmart is the speaker. Okay, then we just work straight across the columns, and we plug it in as a sentence. And you come up with, Walmart simplifies its shopping experience in order to appeal to the everyday consumer's desire for ease.
Boom.
And it's so funny, Tim, like I have a particular student who just, when we did this, he just went, oh, that's so good. Like,
this is really easy to differentiate too, because, one kid might say, Walmart projects a simplified shopping experience in order to appeal to the everyday consumer's desire for ease. But another thing too is I get a lot of students that ask me about the sophistication point, as if you can do like one small thing and get the sophistication point, which you can't. But a lot of things can kind of add up into building towards a sophistication point, and one of them is that vivid and persuasive style. And sentence variation has a lot to do with that, or it can help contribute to that. And when students have this kind of topic sentence on the right-hand side, I could tell some of my kids, hey, what if we were to actually reposition this topic sentence and say, in order to appeal to the everyday consumer's desire for ease, comma, Walmart simplifies its shopping experience. Boom. And now we can show kids how this, more complex sentence can be switched back and forth, and we're good to go.
Yes. And that like I said, if you do this at the beginning of the school year, I would just want to focus them on, let's just write the topic sentence. And then after we have some time under our belts, then we come back around and we say, okay, and we can flip-flop things and we can rearrange. And it does work well. It really does.
Yeah, and I mean, this is as easy as it comes. Now, will you scroll up just so we can see that blank organizer?
Sure.
Okay. And so here's what it comes down to, folks. You fill in the in order to after you talk about a particular advertisement. Then you find what the author is, what is being verbed, after that discussion, you give the kids the verb list and let them try to pick out those verbs, put it in the blue. Then you've got your topic sentence. The kids can color code it, and they can make sure they have all those parts. And we've got the best topic sentences they've been writing all year. It doesn't take that long to do it all.
No, it really doesn't, and it just ups the level of their writing. And I keep coming back to this, their confidence level.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's a really simple. This is something that you could turn around and you could do it in class tomorrow.
Now I'm gonna actually take that. I'm gonna take the image off the screen now, so it's just us talking for just a minute. But you actually use this color-coded method to actually create a color-coded paragraph as well, right? So things consistently match up. Now we're not gonna get into that right now, but if anybody wants to, you can stalk Nicki on the internet and find her email at Hollidaysburg Area High School and whatnot, and make sure that you email her and bombard her with all those things.
I'd be happy to help.
No, and I appreciate that. But I mean, I think this is the easiest, quickest way to get kids thinking about how do I turn what I know as devices into verbs, right? And then how do I put those into topic sentences? Because they work just as well when you do this with reading as well. So I really appreciate your time coming on here today. Before I finish up, is there anything else that you want to say?
No, Tim, I appreciate you and Garden of English and the Facebook group. If you're not on that, please get into the AP Lang Facebook.
That's if you're a teacher, though. If you're a student watching this, you're not allowed in. So sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But if you're a teacher, make sure you get on that because we do like to all support one another there, and whatnot. There is right now about 3 to 4 weeks left before that AP exam is coming up. So for those of you that want to review, I encourage you to look in the description down below for this document and try to see if you can start shifting things into verbs. On top of that, the Garden of English does have an ultimate review packet out there, which is an extensive review of all 9 units of the course and exam description. That's in the link down below as well. Nicki, I really appreciate you. I appreciate your students for reaching out, and I appreciate your willingness to help out people as they are preparing and studying for their AP exam. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. You too. It's good to see you, Tim.
Nice to see you too.